about Joseph being a young man. He has this dream, and he tells the dream to his family. His brothers despise him. They throw him in a pit. They sell him into slavery. He gets to Egypt. He gets bought by Potiphar. Potiphar puts him in charge of his household. God begins to bless Potiphar because of Joseph. Joseph is faithful. And when he sees that God is blessing him because of Joseph, he puts everything that he owns in charge of him. And Joseph is rising in ranks. He's taking care not only of the household of Potiphar, but now he's in charge of all that Potiphar has. And God is blessing him greatly. And then he has that setback where Potiphar's wife takes a shine into him. She likes him, and she wants to have an affair with him because of his integrity. He says, "No, I can't do that to Potiphar. He trusted me with everything, and I'm going to be trustworthy. And I can't do that. I can't do that to God because God is in charge of my life." And so he gets wrongfully accused, and he ends up in prison. Then when he's in prison, he's there a few years, and he has some men that get thrown in there that work directly for Pharaoh, and they have dreams. And God uses him to interpret the dreams. And through that, both of the interpretations come to pass, and he tells the baker, he said, when you're restored, he said, "Don't forget about me. Tell Pharaoh about me." And then 2 years later, he's still in prison. But while he's in prison, he gets put in charge. And as he's running the prison, it runs so well, and things are so blessed that the man in charge of the prison, he doesn't do anything but put Joseph in charge. And so we see that God is training Joseph to be able to organize and to take care and do those things. And then Pharaoh has a dream. And finally, after 2 years, the butler remembers. He said, "Oh, by the way, yeah, I know somebody that can interpret dreams. I was in prison and I had a dream, and he told me about it." And so Pharaoh calls him, and he interprets the dream. And the dream was that there were 7 skinny cows that were on death's door, bony and looked like they were ready to die any moment. And there were fat cows, and the skinny cows ate the fat cows. There were 7 of them. And when they ate them, they didn't change at all. They were still skinny and terrible looking. And then the grains, 7 heads of grain that were full and plump, and then 7 that were blighted and black, and they consumed them, and there was no change. And so Joseph tells him when he gets called before Pharaoh, he acknowledges God. He said, I'm nobody, but I know a God that can tell you what's going on. So he gives all of the glory to God, and he tells him what the dream is, and then he gives him advice. He said, you need what God is showing you, and he's showing you the future of what's going to happen. And he's showing you this so that you can prepare for what's coming. There's going to be 7 years of good, of plenty, that is very unusual, that you've not experienced. But God is going to send these 7 good years so that you can prepare, because behind that is going to be 7 years of lack. Seven years where there's going to be a famine. Nothing's going to grow. And God is showing you this so that you can prepare, so that God can use you to preserve life. And then Joseph says, what you need to do is you need to find somebody that you can trust, somebody that is wise, and somebody that you can put in charge Notice Joseph didn't promote himself. He didn't say, hey, I'm the man for the job. But he said, find somebody that you can trust, somebody that has wisdom. And God illuminates Joseph in the mind of Pharaoh, and he says, who is wiser than you? Who has more understanding than you? And he acknowledges the gifts and the talents that are present in Joseph. They're not of Joseph, but they are of the God that he serves. And so he puts him completely in charge of taking care of things. So they build barns and they store, and in the 7 years they gather up and they gather and gather. And it says that they gathered so much grain and so much plenty that they stopped counting because of the multitudes of what they had. Joseph is in charge. We're going to start in Genesis chapter 42. I'm going to read 1 through 3. It says, when Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, Jacob said to his son, why do you look at one another? He said, indeed, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down to that place and buy that we may live and not die. So Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt. So here we have Joseph. He is in Egypt. He is number one in command, only second to Pharaoh. He's in charge of distributing to anyone and everyone that has need. They come to Joseph to get what they need. Meanwhile, Joseph's father, is down in Canaan. And they're in famine and they're running out of food. And so Jacob says to his sons, he said, I hear that there is grain in Egypt. So go down to Egypt, take money with you, and buy grain that we can live. And so Joseph's brothers, they pack up their animals and they go down into Egypt to buy grain. And when they show up in Egypt, they come before the governor who's in charge of everything in there, and they're saying, "Hey, we're from Canaan, and our father sent us down here to buy grain." And immediately Joseph recognized, these are my brothers. Genesis chapter 42, verse 6, and it says, now Joseph was governor over the land, and it was he who sold to all of the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him, their faces to the earth. The dream that Joseph had when he was 16 years old, that his brothers were going to come and bow down before him. All of a sudden, this dream flashes in his mind. And he realizes that this is his brothers that are there to buy grain. The ones that despised him, the ones that said, you're just a dreamer, you'll never amount to nothing. They come before him and they're bowing there and they say, our father sent us here and we're begging you. We know that you don't owe us anything. We're from a foreign land. But we're asking for mercy. That you would let us buy grain. That my family will live and not die. And so Joseph sells them some grain and sends them on their way. There's some other events that happen, but for sake of time, we're not going to get into that completely. But I encourage you to go and read the full story in Genesis. And so they eat their grain, and they when they run out of grain, finally, Jacob says, we're going to have to make another trip to Egypt. And meanwhile, while we were there, Joseph found out that he had another brother named Benjamin. And he set it up where he said, you can't come back to me unless you bring your brother with you. So he sets that up. And then we go down to chapter 45, verse 6 to 11. And it says, for these 2 years the famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting, and God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your life by a great deliverance. So now it's not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh and the Lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me the Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me and your children and your children's children, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. And there I will provide for you, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty, for there are still 5 years of famine. So finally, after 2 years, Joseph reveals himself to his brothers. He's like, hey, it's me, your brother Joseph. Don't you recognize me? And when they realize that it is Joseph, can you imagine the fear that gripped their heart? Like, oh no, it's like we've been found out. The sin, this great sin that we've tried to cover is found out. Now we're in trouble. But what was it that Joseph said? Joseph said, no. He's like, look, you have to understand. It's like, you think that you did this to me? You think that what you did was terrible? Like, this wasn't you. This was God. God had sent me here for a purpose. He sent me for a reason. I didn't understand it when you threw me in the pit. I didn't understand it when you sold me into slavery. And now you don't understand. But God is showing you, and He's showing me, that He was working a purpose through you and in me. And the reason why you sold me into slavery is because God was positioning me here for this time. You think that you were giving me a sentence of death and getting rid of me, but what God was doing was God was taking me to the place where He could use me. He was fulfilling the dream that I shared with you. And He sent me here to preserve life. It was in that moment when he finds out that his father's alive, when he finds out that his brothers are in need, when he finds out that all of those years that God had it all planned out. And through the adversities that he experienced, what God was doing was He was training him how to be a leader. He was training him how to run a household, how to run a prison, and then how to run a country. And he realized and through this process, he's realizing it's nothing about him, but it's all about the God that he serves. He realizes that the only way that I'm going to be somebody special is by me submitting to God and submitting to His will and saying, okay, God, you brought me here for a reason. And now I'm ready to fulfill the purpose that you've called me for. What a freeing moment they had, realizing that God had sent him there not to put his life in jeopardy, but to save him and to save his family and to leave a legacy. This was God's people. And so Joseph sends his brothers back home, and they tell their father Jacob that, hey, Joseph is alive. Not only is he alive, but he is in charge down in Egypt. And he said that there's going to be 5 more years of famine. And a matter of fact, Pharaoh, if you look out the window, Pharaoh has sent some carts. He's made preparation. And you have an open invitation to come to Egypt. And our brother Joseph is going to take care of you. You're going to see your son again. The one that you thought was dead. The one that you grieved over all of these years, he's alive and well, and he's in charge. And he's asking you to come down. Genesis chapter 47. We'll read verse 5 and 6. So Jacob loads up the carts. He packs up the family, kids, the grandkids. They load up, they gather the livestock together, and they start making the trip to Egypt. And this is what happens when they get there. Genesis 47, verse 5 and 6. It says, Then Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, saying, Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Have your father and brothers dwell in the best of the land. Let them dwell in the land of Goshen. And if you know any competent men among them, then make them chief herdsmen over my livestock. Jacob shows up to Joseph. Pharaoh comes to Joseph. He says, hey, your father and your brothers are here. Take them over to the land of Goshen, which is the best land of all of Egypt. Tell them that's where they're going to stay. And he said, if any of your brothers are competent, give them a job of taking care of the livestock. You see what God did? Not only did he reunite Joseph with his family, not only did he reunite him with his father, but when they got there, God blessed them with the best land in Egypt. And when they got there, God blessed his brothers with a job. And so now it's that aha moment for Joseph. Now I know. Now I know, God, that you sent me here. Now I know that you're in charge. So I want to encourage you today. You may be experiencing one of those times of like, God, I don't know where you're at. Or God, I don't know what you're doing. I don't understand why I'm at this point in my life. What is your purpose? You may not understand it now. But I want you to know that there is going to be a moment. There's going to be a time where God reveals the purpose in what He brought you through, and then you're going to have that, oh, now I know. The time when it all makes sense. When God makes you complete. When God shows His purpose. And when you find out that the purpose that God has for you is so much bigger than just you. But it's about those that God has in your life. And what an impact that He can make through you. Isn't that amazing that, there's so many times when God uses us and we don't even see it coming. But then we realize that, hey, God has set this up. And we can look back and we can see God's hand in each step of the way. And then we can glorify God because He loves us. Because He is in charge. Because He does know what He's doing. So I want to encourage you today to trust God. Trust God in the process. We may all be in different stages. We may be in that revelation stage where we see what God is doing and we have that aha moment. Or we may feel like we've just been thrown in the pit. Or we've just been sold into prison. Or thrown into prison. But trust God's purpose. Lean on God wherever you're at today, whatever you're experiencing today. Lean on God. Because He's not unaware. See, when we struggle and we feel like we don't have any hope, it's because we don't realize that God is aware of where we're at. And we don't realize that God is in charge. And sometimes the length of what we go through is because we haven't yet given Him the authority or given that to Him to say, okay, God, I'm going to trust you and I'm going to let you be in charge. I'm going to stop trying to figure it out. I'm going to stop trying to make things happen. But I'm going to simply trust you. And I'm going to ask you, Lord, that where I'm at right now, that you take charge. That you give me wisdom and understanding and help me to trust you in the process. And in your timing, God, I'm going to be able to say, now I know. Would you go ahead and play that song? I'm going to play the same song that we played last week.